Welcome to Chasing Hard podcast, where we talk about following God hard and where that usually ends us to be in a place in the middle of hard things. And what I typically talk about after 3 months or so of podcasting, what seems to be the theme that we're landing on is grief and loss and grief. And as you've listened, or if you've listened to the podcast for any amount of time, you totally understand that life is a series of losses. I mean, some losses are not painful. Some losses, you move to a better home, you get a better job, you add to your family. But with each new thing that you add, there's a loss of something. When you move to a new home, you leave the place where maybe you lived as a newlywed, maybe had your first child, maybe grew up in, maybe where your loved one passed away. I mean, it's a loss on a certain level. When you get a new job, you're leaving some people, you're leaving an area, you're leaving a building, you're leaving familiarity, constant. I was in a position, I work at my church. I was in a position for 6 years, just about 6 years. And although I didn't love the job, I loved the team. I loved the people on the team. I loved the people that I saw while doing my job. I did it for 6 years. My same area, it was mostly routine. I saw different people, different days, and there wasn't a lot of variety. People came and people went on my team, but I built some friendships there that have lasted, even though these people have moved on, gotten better jobs, whatever. The job that I moved to, I love. It's kind of like what I was made for. But there were losses. Like I left the building, I'm in a different building. So I left those people that were in that building. I've made new friends in the new building, but there's a loss. And when there's a loss, there needs to be a time of grief and mourning. And that looks different for a lot of people. Like it's not etched in stone how to grieve when you change jobs. And the process and the steps of grief aren't linear. You move in and out of them. But I've found that if you don't do that intentionally, if you don't set out to grieve the things that you lose, even if it's for a good thing, then you get stuck. It may not be visible, it may not be apparent, but somewhere you're going to be stuck and it's going to come out. Maybe in unhealthy behaviors, because we were created to deal with loss and grieve. It's been hard for me to focus on a specific and particular subject, which is why I've had a variety of different guests, and I've enjoyed talking with the guests and listening to their stories, and I will continue to do that. But the theme of this podcast, the reason for this podcast, is basically how you grieve the things you lose. You know, when you're adding people to your family, you get married, and it's just the couple, and you're doing life as a couple, and then you get pregnant. And that changes things. It changes things a lot. And maybe you had a very full life as a couple, and you did a lot of things with other couples. That's your life's going to change. When you have a baby, your life is going to change. That doesn't have to be like stop, and be dull and boring and you can't do anything. It doesn't, you incorporate the baby into your life and you change your life to fit the baby and to do things with the baby and for the baby. Because they don't stay babies long. So you're growing and you're changing, but that's a loss. The loss of the couplehood turning into three. Is it a joyous occasion? Absolutely. Would I trade that for anything else? Never, not even for a minute. I loved adding to our family. I remember when it was just three of us, me and my daughter, because I was a stay-at-home mom, me and my daughter all day, every day. She was the baby. She was my focus. All of my energy went into taking care of this baby that I really didn't know how to take care of because I'd never been a mother before. The books can't prepare you. People can't prepare you. You kind of learn as you go. And so I waited for 10 years to become a mother. I didn't know what the problem was. I badly, badly, badly wanted to be a mother for 9 years and 6 months of those 10 years. I remember how desperately I wanted to become a mother and how painful it was every month when I found out I wasn't going to be a mother in 9 months. And I remember as the time went on, it became more painful and more discouraging as I watched my friends have their babies and have second and third babies, and I just wanted a baby, and how trapped I felt and how totally out of control maybe because I couldn't do anything to change that. There was nothing I could do to change there was nothing I could do to become pregnant. I was doing my part. We were doing our part. Conception is a divine thing. So I remember not wanting more children, but not wanting for it to be another 10 years before I got pregnant again, because by then I would be 40. And so when I learned that I was expecting again, that was exciting to me. It was a little before my preferred time frame, but I was overwhelmed with excitement that it wasn't going to be another 10 years. I was excited. I was ecstatic when I wasn't sick as a dog, but that's another story. But then you get time. Thank God you get 9 months to prepare as best as you can. But I remember there was a grieving process of losing that one-on-one with me and my first baby. I loved my boy when he arrived. He had my heart from the very beginning. His birth was different with my daughter. We had an emergency C-section because toxemia. It was a long labor. With my second child, my son, it wasn't as long. It was long, but it was a different birth, and it felt like he and I worked together to bring him into the world. It was. I loved it, but there was a grieving process that I had to go through, and I did go through it before he was born, knowing that this 3-member family, this mommy and me every day, one child, one mommy, was over. We're now going to be a family of 4, which was cool, which I loved, which was exciting, which was good, but there was a loss. And that's what happens with all the things. We think of loss as death or these desperate situations, and that is loss, the worst kind of loss. When you lose your health, when you lose your spouse, when you lose your child, when you lose your home, when you lose your job, those are hard losses, and they need some very intentional grieving time. But knowing that loss also comes along with the good things. It's good to know. It's a life. It's a life hack. Like, you got to grieve. Like, if you don't know how to grieve and you don't want to grieve, well, you're pretty much flat out of luck, because life is a series of losses that we need to learn how to grieve. And I've grieved alone and I've grieved with people. It's easier to grieve with people, though it's a solo process as well. You have to grieve yourself. Everybody grieves differently. Everybody experiences the phases of grief differently. And so each individual will be different and the process will be different. So you're going to have to do it alone at some point, but to do it with a group of people, it's a bonus. And when I say you're going to have to do it alone, I don't mean without the Holy Spirit, without God in you. Because to grieve well, you need to anchor yourself to something. And is there not a better anchor than the anchor of our souls? Jesus already came. He already paid the price. He already grieved the losses. He already redeemed all things. We just have to go through the human process of feeling the feels and moving through them intentionally. What I want to do with my podcast is what I hope to do with my book, which is about to be published. I ran into a few hiccups that I hadn't anticipated, and I had to wait on a few people to sign off for different reasons. And so it's free and clear to go. I finally connected with a person who gets the book cover, who has some pretty cool ideas about the book cover. So once I have that, I'm good to go. And now, even with that, like, there's a loss, because so far, this book that I poured my life into for 8 years, not continually, but I actually started the book 8 years ago, and it took me 8 years to get to the point where I could write the story in the frame of mind that I needed to be in, and to write the story that God wanted me to write, because it's not about the things that we go through, though it is. My book is about the things that I've experienced, but more importantly, the book is about how I responded to those things. I'm here to tell you, I didn't always respond well. Not always, and not for a while. It's hard to be a victim of anything in life and get past the fact that you don't have to stay a victim. You're not a victim. You were victimized by the situations. So it took me a while to get to the point, to get the book to be where I feel like is honoring to God and to the people in my life. And now that it's ready to roll, waiting for the book cover, and then I'm good to go. But I got to tell you, it's a loss, because that's me. That's part of me that most people don't have access to, and they definitely don't have access to it in a carefully laid out story. If you're an author, a creator of any kind, you probably get it, because I hear that's normal. It's par for the course. I want to incorporate more of this grieving and loss thing going forward in the podcast. I want to share the stories of different people and the different losses that they have endured, and how Jesus helped them to overcome those losses that have changed them forever. But go from that point to grow and thrive to a place where you can lock arms with your brother or sister and help them journey. Because it's always easier to journey with other people, and it's always easier with a person who has been in a similar situation. as the one you're going through now. So I just wanted to give you a little update about the book, give you a little update about maybe what to expect a little more of. I mean, I'm not a downer. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer in the podcast. I don't want to, oh, woe is us. We've lost so much. No, woe is not us. We have lost so much, but we always gain things in the loss as well. If you believe in the redeeming power of Jesus Christ and the work that he did on the cross and the work that he completed when he rose from the dead. We're living in trying and perilous times. Like, it can be pretty disturbing. All the things that are going on right now, you can't even keep up. There are so many things that you can't even keep up. And so many things to grieve. And at this time that I'm recording, it's Hawaii, Maui. But I just learned, and I knew about the Greece fires, but not the Texas fires. I knew about Canada, but not Oregon, not California. Like, things are going on everywhere. And I feel like now I'm going to get conspiracy theory. I don't want to do that. There are so many things happening right now. It's hard to believe it's merely a coincidence. We have a very real enemy who is the God of this world. And we have some brilliant minds who have created some technological, I don't know if I said that right, things. And I guess that's all I want to say about that. Except, along with our grieving of loss, and there are plenty of things personally, and then there are worldwide things. To be wise as serpents, harmless as a dove, as the Bible tells us to be. To question everything and pray. Because ultimately, in the end, this is not our home. The grieving that we do is temporary, and it's tied in with our life here, but it's necessary to be the person that we were created to be, to do the work that God has called each of us individually to do, and collectively. We need to be whole and functional and healthy, not perfect, but working toward the goal of being like Jesus. And like, we can't do that and we can't be that if we don't know how to grieve the losses so that we can let them go and move on. Only knowing that there is an end to this life and there is an afterlife, and to keep that as the goal, that we are racing for the higher prize. That's the purpose. That's the reason. It's the reason to grieve. That's the reason to acknowledge the loss. That's the reason to embrace the things that you encounter instead of fighting against them. Like, yeah, I spent a lot of time fighting against the losses, trying to change the past, which is impossible. Impossible. No matter how much we hate those things that happened, we can't change them. And the energy that we waste on holding on to those things and trying to make them fit is a waste of time. We could be grieving and moving forward and allowing God to do those things in our heart that he wants to do. So this turned into a little bit more than what I had anticipated. I feel like it was God ordained and God inspired. I hope you continue to come along for the ride as we talk about chasing hard still, but we focus more on what we do when life doesn't turn out the way we plan. How do we grieve our losses in order to be free to move forward? I hope you join me. And I thank you for joining me now and investing the time that you invest in this podcast that really is about you. Let me know if you have anything you want us to pray for, if you have any ideas that you want to see talked about, or any people that you want me to reach out to. Let me know, and we'll see what happens. Thanks for joining. See you next time on Chasing Hard podcast.